Hello, everybody. This one isn't the interactive webinar. This is the, so just say how's it in the chat. Make smiley faces and laughing faces. How is everybody today? I see that half the people haven't got online. I think we're having wonderful internet challenges at this point. Seth says, how's it? So today we have Brad Anassis, who was the first person to receive a South African national colours for drag racing for successfully completing the World Drag Race Championship, made history to be the first person to break the 7-second barrier on drag racing, street racing, on a street bike in South Africa. Brad currently holds the fastest speed record for drag bikes in Africa. Today, Brad is going to be talking a little bit more about preparedness and how that will actually impact our daily lives and how he actually got to be the fastest person. It wasn't just because he had a fast bike, says my son, because you need to know how to stop at the end of the day. So welcome, Brad, and thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks. It's quite exciting to be on my first webinar. And I look forward to sharing some of my preparedness success with the listeners.
Yes, so please be nice and treat Brad with all kindness. This is his first live online webinar, and he's quite excited to share some of the information. So interact as much as you can. That'll be great. Thank you so much, Brad.
Yeah, quite different to normally being in a boardroom full of people chatting about the situation and how we find ourselves, or myself putting a helmet on and getting onto a track, and how prepared am I in the background to be able to win, be safe, go fast. And I've been fortunate to pull and start up companies and travel around the world and meet people. And yeah, this is a real different mindset for me. I've made some notes, and excuse that we don't have any really fancy slides, but I'm sure that I'll get cracking with this and in due course be able to prepare better for this webinar.
That's all good. So you take us from where you want to go and go through the presentation as you feel. So what Brad and I discussed is Brad is actually just going to talk from his heart and from his where his passion is lying, and his passion is for speed, and his passion is for helping others achieve greatness. So had quite a few chats with Brad, and I think this is a great opportunity to learn from him. Thanks, Brad.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to be looking at two screens, so just excuse me if I look sideways here. As I get older, my eyesight's getting weaker, and I can't really see on my laptop too well, so I've got a big screen up on the left. Just a few questions, Nolene. How many people are in us now? I'm just learning about this now.
So we've got Guy, Mickey, and Seth at the moment. I think everybody else, we had probably about 20 registrations, but it looks like everyone else has gotten distracted.
Yeah, maybe once they put their helmets on, they've gone into their own little world. Yeah, yes. So yeah, just off the bat, I wanted to just talk about, and you and I have been discussing, even myself getting prepared on LinkedIn, which is a whole new phase of social media, or the world in the World Wide Web, that I have not really been involved in. So being prepared is absolute key, and like we spoke about, what is my definition of being prepared, and whether I'm prepared on the track or off the track, it really got me motivated on how to understand the situation that I was going into. I always relate to everything being a race. Life's a race, and I'm a racer, and I want to see the checkered flag, and winning, that feeling you get when you win, is really special. And to relate that, to win, you have to be prepared. And I started a business, a branding company, after living in America, coming back to South Africa, and saying to myself, I want to take on the Yanks at their own game. So I had to go and learn from the best about how do you win the race. Starting a business from scratch was very. I actually think it was easier in the olden days because, well, I say olden days. I'm moving on now. In times that passed, now starting up a company was easy. You could just get a space, rent a space, borrow a space, and start up a business, either in your manufacturing or consulting. And what really got to me was people's backgrounds and educations, and I was always overwhelmed about how educated some people were. And I had a matric, and I had a motorbike, and I had a crash helmet, and I wanted to win. And understanding how to win and how to get prepared was a challenge for me, being not so well educated, coming from a technical matric. So I got myself the best toolbox, and I had a few people surround me in my young days. And it came from sponsors. When I was racing for big blue chip companies, a lot of the Japanese brands, Suzuki was one of them. There was a gentleman who took me and he taught me a few basics, and he always said to me, surround yourself with the right people and the right toolbox, and you'll be prepared. So that's what I did. I went and got myself the best possible toolbox, and I got prepared. And I did the same in my business. I got the best possible people I could, bought the best machines, and always try to stay at the forefront of technology, whether it was on the racetrack or in the business. And that started my success. So again, when I got the toolbox, I needed to know how to use the tools. That became a challenge. And then I had to read up and understand product. And after winning races, you now want to translate that into business. And again, the same thing applied. I just had to get prepared. I had to know what tools to use at what certain stage. And the preparation was key to winning the sale and making the sale, and understanding the needs of the event or the business matter I was in, and understanding how I'm going to win. Once you get that feeling of winning, you get more prepared, and then whatever life threw at me, I just carried on trying to get better at it, faster at it. Trying to break my own speed records was sometimes hard, because I had challenges where there was no information. I couldn't get products, so you had to go and manufacture products. When you start manufacturing products, it opens a whole nother ball game, because now you've got to deal with people and with products that is unknown. So you go and manufacture something and then bolt it onto a product, onto a sale, whether I'm in a boardroom or on the racetrack, but always relate to how prepared I was in the background, to be able to get that feeling again, to carry on winning. So then I had to surround myself with better people, and that became expensive. So now you're out there in the world, understanding how you're going to make more money to afford better product and get even better prepared. And then there was always the basics. I always forgot about the basics, and I had to go back to my toolbox and pull out the basic spanner to adjust something. And then you get too fancy and you build these great products, or you arrive at the racetrack and you cannot understand the toolbox you've got now, because it's completely different. And it was challenging. So I made some more notes for myself here. I'm just going to quickly pull them up.
So Brad, then I want to ask you a question. How would you relate having the right toolbox to achieving the space where you became the fastest man on two wheels in Africa? How would you relate by having the right toolbox back into that aspect as well?
Sometimes that toolbox is unknown. We don't always know what is the right tool. We adjust something, and we take the data, which was very interesting. And here comes the spin back into the business side of things. So I took the toolbox, took the tool, adjusted it, and went back out onto the racetrack. But then data came around, and we were able to measure. And I've always had that saying, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So we then got very familiarized ourselves with data logging and equipment that could understand how we're going to mechanically adjust using electronics to go faster. And then you start understanding, how do you translate a graph into forward motion? And it's quite strange how I think about these things, because I equated it back to when I'm sitting in the boardroom and I'm trying to understand a customer's needs, go back to my factory and build something that's going to A, perform the job, be safe, and be a winner that we could make money. That was always an exciting thing to me. I always said I love manufacturing, but I prefer getting paid. Yeah, so I have all these little sayings that keep me going. And sometimes I'll walk out of a boardroom or leave a racetrack and I've won or I haven't won. And I say to myself, well, I learned something that day. And the tool that I used really worked. So then I would go back to the workshop and take the part or the equipment apart and try and make it better. So yeah, tools, data, analyzing, understanding, and as again, I have to laugh at myself, because I come from a very uneducated background with a technical trick, and I get into situations and I get thrown at some very big words, and I go back. Then I say to myself, never miss a good opportunity to shut up, go away, understand, and come back and try and win the next race. So I hope that answers that question.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that you've kind of also brought back home is we must forget the basics. And I think a lot of the people at the moment are, thinking that, okay, so we know everything, we're just going to dump it all into work from home or whatever else. We've been in a transition phase from being prepared to be digital transformation for how long, and now suddenly we're not prepared because we've forgotten about the basics. And I think that's something to just bring home during this time that we're all kind of facing at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what's also important is to start recapturing your processes and your function, exactly what you are set out to do. Recapture it again, and don't forget, and don't be scared to write it down and say to yourself, okay, so this is what I did before. How am I going to do it now in this situation we find ourselves in? But how am I actually going to make a difference? How am I going to understand the position and get everybody around me to trust me and actually believe in my vision? That's important. I sometimes find that difficult to get some people's attention and to trust what you're going to do. And once you start capturing that and writing the basics down and just doing the basics and getting the basics right again in a different format, like we are now on a digital front format, instead of sitting in a boardroom and actually looking at the person and getting a face value and getting them to trust what you're going to be offering them, selling them the services, the products, whatever you're going to be doing. So, yeah, the basics, we forget about it. We need to go back to it because it really works,
Absolutely. Okay. And then from that perspective, the recapping and processes, what were the kinds of processes you had to readjust when you were racing? So you said that you were doing, the data logging, and then you would go back and measure, and then you'd improve. But what was the little things that you did throughout that process that helped you improve in the racing as well as then in business? What mistakes were made?
Yeah, so you make mistakes that sometimes are hard to analyze. You think it might be a mistake, but the other person, you're still winning the race, but how do you want to go faster? How do you want to go better? So understanding the data was something unique. Really test and measurement. You look at the big companies in the world, the TUVs of the world, the SGS. There's many companies who just do test and measurement. The mines are very big on test and measurement. So if you can't measure it and you can't test it, you can't improve it. But then how do you understand it? that's a big part of engineering in a manufacturing business. I can't really relate to the computer world because I would see people build software, and you would go out into the marketplace and put it out live and see if it's working and test it and make changes and adjustments. On a mechanical side, on a motorcycle, you would make mechanical adjustments. You'd change lengths, you'd change gearing, you'd change tire compounds. The derivatives are huge to be able to go fast. And if you look at, I can relate to everybody watching Formula One or MotoGP, you'll see the guys on the pit lane wall with all these TV screens around them. And these TV screens are transmitting data. And then that specific engineer would take that data and he'd go back and he'd sit in his little office and he'd analyze the data, and he'd then report to a senior crew chief engineer who would then relate that data back into hopefully forward motion, which is time, which is faster, which is winning. So that's how the tools and the toolboxes and the data around you are actually captured. And it's extremely interesting to be able to understand a graph and take that graph and turn it into a mechanical to go forward. And don't forget, all of this we're dealing with. And this is what I also sometimes I put myself under huge pressure, where I would put myself in a situation where I'm uncomfortable and not able to run it, but I would still maintain and capture and try and express as best as I can to the client or to the race bike, whether I've got my helmet on or my helmet off, to try and make best of the situation we find ourselves in. So as a human, we still have to be able to adapt to different situations all the time. And some of it's reflexes. Racing a motorbike is in absolute reflexes. It's done in seconds. It's not. It's absolute an emotional change. It happens. It's so fast. So, at least in business, and you're sitting in a boardroom, or I am now behind my computer, I read my presentations 20 times over before I push send. I sometimes walk away, come back, and I'd find something that I thought of that I didn't think of. So, as a human, we shouldn't put ourselves under so much pressure to deliver the right answer, or the right emotion, or the right throttle position straight away. It's sometimes difficult. Have I lost you?
No, I muted myself while while you're talking. That's why. And then the button didn't want to work. The wonderful technology. So from that perspective, one of the things that I know you wanted to talk about is surrounding yourself with the right people. How did that influence from a racing perspective? Because at one point you say that it got really expensive to surround yourself with the right people. So kind of explain us through that process.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So in racing, when you're winning, you can demand more money. I'll relate to Valentino Rossi. I'm sure all of our listeners out there will know who he is. So the more he won and the more famous he became, the more money he could demand. And it was simply a commercial value. The people that wanted to associate their brands with him would pay more money to have their logo associated with him, and he'd get to spend more time in the corporate environment with the sponsors, and people would buy the product. So what makes people expensive is the team that he surrounded himself with were very good at making him look good. And you can do the same thing in business. You've got to surround yourself with the right people. Sometimes you're an individual and you're just a person who offers services or sells a product on behalf of somebody else. It's always difficult, but if you don't surround yourself with the right product or the right people, it's going to be hard. You can soon see who can deliver and who can't. In the mechanical field, in the workshop field, I took some people and trained them. I was very fortunate to have a father who was very mechanically educated and knew how to make motorcycles go fast. So first of all, you need a fast motorcycle before you can win. So what my dad and I did is we took some youngsters off the street, found them youngsters working in motorbike shops, and we pulled them into a workshop that I built in Pretoria, and we trained them up. And they then got educated with us, and then also grew their own capacity to learn more, and did their own homework, and understood how to go faster on their own. And now two of these guys, actually three of these guys, have got their own workshops, have gone on to build their own businesses, and they're all doing extremely well for themselves. So proudly created some youngsters who could also follow on from us and learn.
So Paul's asking, Brad, did you ever envision yourself being where you are today? And if yes, was there a thought process behind that?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Paul. No, I didn't envisage I'd be where I am today. I sometimes have to pinch myself because I have a lot of fun, and I want to still enjoy my life. If I had to do it all over, I'd probably do exactly the same. I would just diversify my own personal investments into where I am now. I would have done this earlier. I'm so proud to be associated with BST and the carbon fiber wheel industry. We'll touch a bit on that now. But looking back, I left school, did 2 years in the army, and then moved to America. I drove from San Francisco to Miami all by myself at the age of 21, like 4,500 miles. And while I was driving across America, I actually saw and knew that one day I would have and I would use this opportunity to further my life. So as I'm driving down the road, I'm thinking, I'm seeing McDonald's. This is back in 1990. And I'm thinking, this is not in South Africa. And everywhere I stopped, everywhere I went, I just absorbed. I used to have such a headache from absorbing every day that I'd have to take headache tablets because I just couldn't grasp everything and take everything in. But it's so evolved that through racing, I was fortunate to meet a lot of amazing people around the world. And that opened some amazing business doors. I found myself in meetings back in the early 90s with a company called Nashua. And there was one of my sponsors, and they were very good to me, and they helped me. And that also taught me to surround myself with the right people and the right companies. I then started building products, had my own little factory, and took these products back and delivered to them. And that made me extremely proud. In fact, I probably got more proud of delivering a great product and a great service than I did of winning the race. So, yeah, I never envisaged I'd be here today, and being able to travel as much as I did. I've been very fortunate.
That's awesome. Guy has asked, did you ever go through a bad patch, and how did you get out of it?
Yeah. Don't let anybody tell you they've never been through a bad patch, because we all have, whether it's personal or business. Sure, we've had our rocky roads. My company at one stage was employing 100 people, and I'd lie in bed at night and think, how am I going to get through this? So challenges beyond belief. Going into a race meeting and finishing in the middle of the field of 40 riders, that was heartbreaking. You'd go home and think, how am I going to get back up to the front? So all these youngsters coming around that were just hungrier and more desperate and were willing to put their lives on the line to win. So you go back, you get better equipment, you get better people, and you surround yourselves again with real good basics that you can measure and get your wheels going faster forward. You get fitter, you get stronger, and that drives to a mental position where you could be faster on the racetrack and in business. You just get cleverer.
No, that's good advice. I think that's why, during this time, what we're doing is this, these 4 o'clock sessions, so that all we're doing is kind of helping other people motivate and inspire people to help each other get through whatever we're going through right now, because everybody's in a different space. I know Paul has been having computer challenges today where Microsoft wasn't so nice to her and she had to reset her machine. So well done, Paul, for being online today. I think that was a big challenge for her.
Yeah.
One of the other questions is, how did you feel when you actually broke that 7-second barrier?
Yes, I've got this elephant brain, but I remember a lot of things really well from my youth, through my high school days, through military and all that. But there's a few moments that stick in my mind, and I remember the run clearly. To explain to people, to go 0 to 100 in 1 second is how fast this bike is. And the G-forces, it's my real drug. I've never had a cigarette in my life. I'm a very soft, occasional, friendly drinker. I love a beer at rugby or something like that. But my drug is speed. And to tell somebody, to explain what G-forces go from 0 to 100 in 1 second, it's absolutely mind-blowing. I can't explain it in my little vocabulary that exists in my head. But I remember the day I broke the record. It was at an old racetrack called West Bank Raceway, called Gosforth Park. There was a horse racing track out in the back of Johannesburg that was converted into a racetrack. And sadly, there was an American partner, and he opted to turn the land into an industrial park. And I remember that day very clearly when I was the first guy into the sevens, and I won a championship at that event. And you have all your friends and family around you, and it was really special. I remember standing up on the wall on the way back and just celebrating. It was mind-blowing.
Awesome. And Paul has another question saying, success usually comes with pressure of keeping up. How do you cope with the pressure of keeping up with the reputation that you have built?
Sure. So that's a hard one. You can't always keep up. Somebody is going to come around. Somebody is going to go faster. A company is going to build better products. So yeah, I think life's race, as I put it, is challenging. Yeah, keeping up. It's very difficult. Hey? It's you got to eventually say to yourself, hey, listen, how much longer do you want to keep up? How much longer do you want to go carry on working for? What are your goals? Set your target. I've set mine. It's gonna be very interesting to see if I can get to where I want to be. I'm an avid golfer. I love golf. So my aim is to go and play as many golf courses around the world as I possibly can. Yeah, that one might be a bit of a dampener now with this horrible disease we're dealing with, but I'm very optimistic. I'm very positive that we'll get through all of this. So yeah, good question there. We just cannot keep up all the time. You have to be content at some stage that I was the fastest. I've lost the record. I enjoyed the limelight for a certain period of time, and somebody else, good luck. That's always important. But one thing I've done successfully also is give back. We often forget to give back, and that's what I'm very successful with my young technicians that are trained, that are now running their own race teams, which I'm very proud of. And it's awesome to go to the tracks and see these young kids now looking after factory teams that I know I found working on the floor in a workshop, two kids in particular. And that makes me very proud to give back, and still today, we've got to just look at the situation we're in now and what little difference can we make. Might not be monetary. I mean, I've just been going through my phone book and just calling my friends up that I haven't spoken to in years and just say, how's it and what have you been up to? Just, you never know that any of them might just need a friendly voice just to hear and just to take their mind off something, So it's something that I've been trying to make a change with lately.
That's awesome. So, I mean, as a recap, the things that I've taken out is part of being prepared is you mustn't forget your basics, go back to basics, because we've all got some sort of basics, whether we're in IT or whether we're in sales or marketing or having our own business, whether we're just an administrator, they're still going back to basics of what we actually know. And don't forget those basic tools. Absorb everything around you. So something that you did when you were 21 is writing 4,500 miles, and you absorbed everything around you. So I know that another one of my clients is also saying that in the last year, all he's been doing is absorbing, being this sponge and taking in as much information, as much knowledge, as much learning as possible. And I think that's something we need to be. We're privileged that now there's a lot of free content that's now paid for, that we can absorb as much information around us as possible.
Very true. Whatever industry you're in, don't be scared to absorb. I can relate to anything, and I'm not scared to tackle any projects. And I love to know my opposition. I love to use out there and how I can equate to making it better. How am I going to make a difference? That's very important. I love looking, love capturing, love understanding, and seeing who's doing what, and make a difference, so that when you pitch whatever you're doing, you make a difference, add value.
Yeah, I think most people that know me very well always know that it's about adding value first before you go in and do a sales pitch. And I think this is exactly the forum that I'm allowing others to just kind of add value during this time, because people are scared, they're fearful of the unknown, they're anxious because we don't know if we're coming out of lockdown and when we're coming out of lockdown. All of those questions, all the while, business has to run as normal. Do I still have a job when I go back? So Seth is also asking, what was your motivation to keep going and trying harder and harder to break the world record?
Yeah, so the world record's a little bit out of reach. The African record, I'm very proud to own, and being the fastest guy in Africa on 2 wheels. The world record is something that is close to my heart. I'm not far off it, and the only way to get it is to go to America and actually go and challenge that one, which hopefully will come in the next few years. I'm still a very young person at heart, and the fastest guy in the world on a motorbike, his name is Larry McBride. Larry's in his late 60s, so there's still I still got a 20-year window to go fast.
Yeah.
So again, just repeat, what was Seth's question there? I lost a bit.
What was your motivation? What was your motivation to keep going and keep trying harder?
Yeah, winning. As you know, you've won if you've done anything positive. If you prepared and you got it right and you achieved whatever you set out to do, whether you got in your car and drove to the shops, it was something you prepared to do and you did it and you achieved. So what mine was winning, seeing that checkered flag, seeing the time on the screen, understanding that you won the race. That feeling you get is really special. Not everybody can win. There's a championship and there's a winner. Just competing sometimes is enough for some people to say, I won. I think of the winner, I won. But I was just there. For me, it was really coming first. Getting that trophy, getting that Springbok blazer, that drove me to competing even better, taking South Africa, putting us on the map, competing at the World Champs. That feeling you get. And often I would drive home from a race late at night, all by myself, whether I'm in America, to leave the track, drive a few hours to get a connecting flight to come back home. Just capturing by myself, understanding how successful that was and how I enjoyed it. And if you're enjoying what you're doing, you're a winner. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're running a race, riding your mountain bike, hitting a great golf shot, I'll equate to golf, good around, and I'm coming back for another one. Just that feeling you get, that keeps you coming back.
Okay, so just to give you context, Seth is my son, and he wants to get a motorbike, and his mom is a little bit anxious about that idea. Yes, but so for him, it's also just as well. You're just doing little goals. You're getting X amount in your schoolwork. You're getting X, achieving a little things. So it doesn't even matter if it's school, if it's work. You can achieve the small things first. And then you start stretching your goals. I think a lot of people want that end goal immediately. And I think that's another question I wanted to ask you is, how long did it actually take you, and how many years before you actually became the fastest man on 2 wheels in Africa?
That took me probably about 15 years to achieve that.
So it wasn't an overnight, it was gradual steps that you took.
No, it's the basics and understanding the basics and recapturing the basics all over again. Getting better prepared, more prepared. Understanding the racetracks, understanding the dynamics you've got to work with, and getting great products. And then you just keep going at it. I remember I lost some races where I should have won. And I'd be driving home thinking, what went wrong, you know. Over-eager, over-enthusiastic, immature, make stupid mistakes. You go back and you just capture. Get prepared. Understand how you're going to tackle it. Be very, very calm at whatever you're doing, that you tackle it with a clear mind.
Oh, awesome. That's great. Does anyone else have any questions? And I can see that Nkwazi joined us, Mickey, Ben. Anybody else have any questions for our famous Brad Anassis?
I'm looking at two screens here.
That's okay. I'm also kind of looking at two screens just to make sure we've covered all the points that you wanted to cover in the session today.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting for my first one. I think we can learn from this again, get better prepared.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for your time and for taking time out. Thank you, Brad, for taking your time out and sharing your insights. That it's, you know, it's a marathon. It's not your it took you 15 years to achieve what you did, as what you're holding as a record. The rest of us, you know, are still baby crawlers in terms of running our businesses. We've got small businesses that we are still just putting up on the map. You know, I'm only going into year 3. So there's lots of people that, you know, say, oh, but, you know, we've actually got this and that. You know, some people are year 15 and they're having that dip. And I think it's just, you know, going back and looking at the data, measuring, improving, and getting back to basics.
Very, very important. And if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. I think in your game as well, in all social media, we need to measure it. We need to understand. We need to offer the right services. And I just want to say thank you to you, Nolene, for actually crossing paths with me, how we met. And it's been interesting. And I look forward to your encouragement and the journey that's coming up.
Awesome. Thank you, Brad. And thank you for everybody for taking the time. The recording, I did officially record this time. So the recording will be coming up and going live. Thanks so much, everybody. Have an awesome afternoon.
Wonderful. Thanks, Nolene. Thanks, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Stay at home.